Hello ladies and gentlemen, this is Blue Maxima. Can I ramble to you for a little bit about Oddworld Soulstorm? I was looking forward to it. When I saw it was being given away on PlayStation Plus, I thought, oh neat, I'll see if they improve stuff from new and tasty. And to be fair, let me praise the game for a little bit. They really have improved some things off of the top of new and tasty. The just environmental design is a lot better. This definitely feels a bit more dirty. This feels more like a place that Modokans would run and hide when they've got no other option, and it feels great in that general sense of things. The production level is through the roof as well. It looks great. Some of the cutscenes are ridiculously well animated for what I assume is a really small studio. And it sounds pretty good too. I don't mind the new replacement voice they've got for Abe. He sounds really close. I don't think it's Lorne Lanning anymore. So, yeah, just basically everything around it is good. And there's even a couple of new things they've added which I have potential interest in, but I didn't get far enough into the game to actively get a view on this. Like being able to restrain slicks, being able to craft items out of materials. That's an interesting idea and could lead to a lot of cool little puzzles. But unfortunately, I was kind of stopped short by this game's one absolutely massive shortcoming, at least in my personal opinion. And that is the fact that the controls suck. Now, when I say suck, I mean they aren't absolutely terrible to the point where the game's unplayable. But it's kind of got this weird disconnect going on between the origins of the Oddworld series and what they seem to want to be. So, these games, the Oddworld games, the original PlayStation 1 duology at least, which is in a category known as cinematic platformers. And cinematic platformers are known for being heavy with very deliberate animations, very deliberate movement, and very deliberate results. So the idea was that it could be hard to be agile. You always had the exact same moves available to you at any time. And the funny thing was, these games actually work on, well, these games, I mean the Oddworld ones on PS1, not this one. They worked on a sort of grid. You could guarantee that pressing the right button once would move you one step over. And if you were paying very close attention, you could identify where the bloody grid was, where Abe was allowed to stand, and where he would transition in between grids. So the game was difficult, but it came with a nice bonus that you knew exactly what you were going to do all the time, and the moveset was designed around this concept. So you could very easily figure out the optimal set of moves that you would need, and then it would just be a matter of execution. And in those games it worked perfectly, because they had that great balance between how heavy your animations were, and how heavy your animations were, and how predictable they were. So being on that grid meant that you could absolutely predict what was going to happen and plan your route accordingly. Soulstorm, at the very least, apparently has a two minds thing going on. So the one thing that's worth noting to start off with is that Abe has a lot of his original moves. He still moves relatively heavily. A lot of his animations feel very similar to the PlayStation 1 games, where you have the ability to jump up on ledges, you have the ability to roll, you have the ability to sneak. But they've taken out the other side of it. They've taken out the predictability of your actions once you do them, and they've made the game a lot more free-flowing. But the thing is, Abe's original heavy animations, with this freedom of movement, just doesn't work. I don't think it works very well with each other, because it's very hard to predict where you're going to end up sometimes when you do very specific movements. And there are multiple situations in the second level where I found myself thinking, oh god, I'm going to have to nudge forward so carefully in order to not run into a mine, only to end up nudging the stick just a little bit too hard and ending up in the mine anyway. And I know that this could be excused as me being shit at the game. And like, you know what? Yeah, sure, you can have that if you like. But what I'm saying is, it just doesn't feel right. When you've got this one set of movement designed for one kind of platformer, and then they open it up to make it feel like another kind of platformer, it all just ends up feeling a fair bit clunky. That seems to be my big issue with it. You've got jumps that are actually kind of hard to land. You've got movement that feels a bit stiff, despite the fact that it doesn't really need to be. because these levels aren't really designed around the idea of very precise movements. So I'm sure they could have easily just given up on the whole cinematic platformer entirely, made Abe a bit more nimble, and therefore made the game a fair bit easier to just control and handle without having to worry about sneaking right up to a mine. Hell, they've even made the mines harder than I remember. They're not even on, like, the same... Well, they are on a pattern, but the pattern is significantly harder to hit than the bloody mines in the PS1 game. Why? I have no idea. I'm assuming they had to bring them back because, you know, they're a traditional Oddworld obstacle, but it just doesn't feel right. It doesn't... It just doesn't work together. At least in my personal opinion. So as a result, I keep playing through this game and I keep thinking it's really clunky and kind of unpleasant. And I'm just thinking, why did they design the game this way? It's just infinitely more frustrating to play than I would have thought. And that's my big disappointment. I barely even made it through the second level of like 12 before I was like, ah, screw this. I don't like the way this feels. One of the best parts about Oddworld, at least the original duology, or I'll say even just the original game because I never actually played the second one. But the best part of that game was working your way around the movement system, learning exactly how it worked, learning exactly where you were able to stand, and then slinging it all together. In this game, it just feels like jank. It feels clunky. It feels relatively unpleasant to play. It feels like you've got a moveset that wasn't specifically designed for this. And just, yeah, after about an hour, I was like, I don't really want to do this anymore. And that's a shame, because I like this series, but I just can't seem to get into any of the new ones. Oh well. One of these days I'll go back to the original PlayStation 1 games and do a video on them or something. But yeah, that's it from me. This has been Blue Maxima. I'll see you all next time.